Ask yourself this: how much money do you think your life is worth in its entirety? Don't think about it too intensely. Just take the next 10 seconds to come up with an estimate. Done? Cool. Was it $1 million? $5 million? 10 million? More? Less? A lot less? Now you're probably wondering where I put myself at. And well, honestly, I have no idea. And I guess I'm as lost as some of you watching. Thinking that far ahead into my future really triggers my anxiety, and my thoughts suddenly become surreal and incomprehensible. Maybe it's the leftovers from my teenage angst, but thinking about the worth of my life in terms of money is hard. And when you factor in potential happiness, contribution to society, and how many dreams are achieved, then it gets even more muddled. Depending on how you view it, it's a bit depressing to think about. In terms of putting an arbitrary amount to my life, hopefully 1 million isn't too much to ask. It's a hard question to start off a video, and I'm sorry for that. But it's also the first thing I sold my life for 10,000 yen per year asks us. Long name, I know. Author Sugaru Miyake posted the original story to Japanese image board Futaba channel, or 2chan, pretty much the Japanese counterpart of 4chan, under the name Fafu. The premise is simple. A 20-year-old finds a shop to abide his lifespan, time and health in exchange for money, but the consequences aren't. Later, Miyake would rewrite this into novel 3 Days of Happiness, published by MediaWorks Bunko on December 25th, 2013. Another 3 years later, a manga adaptation would be released on Shonen Jump Plus, a Japanese exclusive manga app offshoot of, you guessed it, Shonen Jump. It's cool that there's a wide variety between beloved classics and manga that wouldn't be published in normal magazines, but locking away I Sold My Life for 10,000 yen per year from the Western audience can't be too good for exposure. And let's just refer to the manga as 3 Days of Happiness from now on, just to make my life a little easier. Thankfully, there's enough fan translations of both the novel and manga on the internet, so we're not out of luck. Still, I've never heard much discussion about this, and that's a shame because it's a rare story that understands reality isn't black and white. Life isn't simple, and sometimes fixing mistakes doesn't equate to success. Yet as scary as the world is, there's happiness to be found, even for the most lost of souls. As a 20-year-old myself, it's easy to relate to main character Kusunoki, a man who feels lost in the world, with no friends or family, a lack of ambition, and stuck between a university degree which he doesn't enjoy and a dead-end part-time job, who spends his free time reading and listening to music. Oh boy, some of this is already hitting close to home. Anyway, when Kusunoki becomes broke, the circumstances lead him to selling off the remaining 30 years of his life for 300,000 yen, leaving him 3 months left to live. In that time, he's stuck with observer Miyagi, a ghost-like girl he hates having around, yet can't help but be a little infatuated with. It's over the course of these months that the protagonist must come to terms with his life regrets and find a fulfilling way to live his remaining time, all whilst becoming closer with Miyagi. As a character-driven plot, a lot of what we learn about our characters are expressed in thought bubbles and conversation. Normally I'd prefer the show don't tell technique, but just like real life, we almost never stop thinking. It's important the reader can delve in and understand the inner workings of Kusunoki, a man drifting to his inevitable death, as well as Miyagi, who on the surface is detached and distant, but inside yearns for the same chances and connections as our protagonist. It also helps that a lot of the dialogue is smart and witty. There's always fun banter between the two, and it shows us all sides to Kusunoki's personality, from his apathy, anger, sadness, happiness, and even a slight glimpse into his darkest, deepest despair. The character development is great. It's fascinating seeing how in 10 years' time, Kusunoki's hopes and dreams as a child are replaced with nihilism and self-pity. It's a profound difference, And it really makes me look to where I was 10 years ago, just to see how much of myself is now unrecognizable, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel this way too. Ironic how only when our main character begins to die is the time he truly begins to live. I also found it refreshing that the people from Kusunoki's past are the ones holding him back. And instead of repairing long gone relationships like other manga akin to A Silent Voice, our author strives for Kusunoki to move on and create new, meaningful relationships. As for Miyagi, it's comforting to see her slowly break down her cold demeanor, and she begins to find happiness under the influence of the protagonist. The chemistry feels natural, and fortunately, there's a lack of annoyances like love triangles, leaving time to focus on how the two make each other better people, and eventually having to come to terms that their time is running out. I was also impressed by the artwork of illustrator Shuichi Taguchi. It's a different departure from his usual work on music-themed manga, as he's a musician himself. Not related, but his band Sentimental Vector has some pretty neat songs. He's one talented guy to be an illustrator, mangaka, and musician at the same time. Coming back to 3 Days of Happiness, the simplicity and minimalistic approach to the character design presents a huge contrast with some of the gorgeously detailed environments, portraying this notion that our characters are just lost souls wandering through a gigantic world. The supernatural elements are downplayed in the artwork, and it works well to immerse the reader into this casual depiction of reality. And just to speak a little bit about the supernatural, it was a good idea to not get too deep into the workings of it, because it's more of a plot device to explore our characters. 3 Days of Happiness is a simple story coupled with complex characters to understand, and while 16 chapters with an additional bonus chapter is quite short for a manga, it was paced extremely well, and at the end I was left with a feeling of closure. No matter what happened next, the characters had found their happiness, and after everything they've endured, this is all that matters. Looking back, I can't for the life of me come up with any major criticisms, aside from when Kusunoki uses his artistic talent as a bargaining chip. That felt like a bit of an arse pull. Otherwise, I'm definitely interested in checking out our author's other works, which, going by the descriptions, seem to carry themes similar to 3 Days of Happiness. Ultimately, it might come down to your life views and where you are in life that dictates what you take away from this manga. For me, I discovered 3 Days of Happiness in a time where I'm transitioning from teen to adult, not sure where I want to go, just letting life take me where it wants. It's a big reason why I've connected with these characters in their journey. What is the value of my life, and can I change it? Or does that even matter? Questions the manga presented at beginning and end respectively. In the afterword of the novel, it's interesting to note Miyake was aiming to capture the hopeless beauty of the fool who creates his own hell, and that only before their death would they be cured. Inadvertently, 3 Days of Happiness got Miyake to speak about the value of life and power of love, among other things. Although it was not his intention, I'm glad he did. Death isn't romanticized, but rather reinforces the saying, the flame that burns twice as bright, burns half as long. Readers are free to interpret the message how they want, but personally, it was that life can't be measured in monetary value, and we should strive to find the happiness we all deserve before we waste our chance at life. 3 Days of Happiness is short and should probably take you only an hour or two. During those few hours, I've taken to heart lessons which I'll carry around for the rest of my life.